Hi everyone, welcome to the Path to a Better You. Today for the first episode I will be discussing sports psychology, and today I've got the privilege to have Tom Bates, a performance psychologist. So Tom, thank you very much for being in the show. I really appreciate it. It's the first episode and I'm very, very grateful to have you on the show.
Thank you for having me.
So can you explain to us the role of the sport psychologist or performance psychologist?
My role is really about understanding how the way that we think affects the way that we feel. And the emotional states that we create for ourselves, in the end, becomes the defining factor in the competitive arena, under the spotlight. What allows you to be at your best when it matters the most? And of course, in sport, when all of the technical, tactical, physical work has been done and all of the preparation is in place, performance then becomes defined by mindset and how well prepared athletes, teams, coaches, managers are mentally and emotionally becomes one of the most important things.
And how did you get into performance psychology and why?
Good question. I was a failed player at schoolboy level, so I became curious about how the mind affects performance, and is it possible to train the mind to be more confident under pressure? Can we improve the psychological traits with practice that allow us to be at our best? So as a player, I probably could have done with working with somebody like me to help me understand how to stay calm, how to stay focused, how to remain in control, how to cope with the pressure in the moment to be at my best.
You're talking about failed players when you talk about you at this time. Are you using failed because you didn't get pro, or you failed because you didn't have the mindset to be a pro?
Yeah, I think I definitely, in hindsight, didn't practice enough, if I'm honest. And that's a big reason for why I didn't make it. But quite honestly, my mother and father were both working class. My father was a labourer on the railway, and my mother had 3 jobs, looking after me and my sister. So I was born out of a working class family, and they never really pushed us to do anything. So when it came to training, it was all an internal motivation, but it wasn't enough. I didn't practice enough. After discovering sports psychology through PE, physical education at Long Road, I found a course that was the only course available in the country down at Bournemouth University, which combined sports psychology with coaching sciences. And so I found the course, and there was really only one place I was going to go and further my education, which was Bournemouth. And the course was 4 years long with a placement year in the middle. And at that time, I was also studying for my coaching badges to become a professional coach.
Did you get it?
Yes, I did. And I was working at AFC Bournemouth at the time. And so they became my first professional football club, which offered me an opportunity to coach in the academy, in the Centre of Excellence, as it was then, under Joe Roach and Eddie Howe, who is now the first team manager, of course. And so I started that journey of being guided by senior, experienced people.
I've seen on your website now that's one of your motto is don't limit your challenge, challenge your limits.
Absolutely.
Can you tell us about it?
In my life, not just in my career, I've come to learn that limits really don't exist. The only limits that really exist are the ones that we place on ourselves through the way that we think. And therefore, most of the time, we are in control to change the way that we think about what is really possible for us in our lives, to overcome this perception that things aren't possible, to remove the obstacles of those self-set limitations that we accept for ourselves. when we begin to understand that we really are capable of much more than we let ourselves believe, then the possibilities of life become endless. We are much more than what we have come to believe or accepted about ourselves. One silly example. On my 21st birthday, my girlfriend at the time, who's now my wife, she paid for a skydive experience for me. And I jumped from 14,000 feet, tandem skydive with the instructor. And on my way up, I met a lady in the plane who was an elderly lady. And she looked around 55, 60. And at the end, after the skydive, we were so excited and happy to have done the jump. We get talking. And maybe impolitely I asked, if you don't mind me asking, how old are you? And she says, guess.
50?
And I said, yeah. I said 50, 55 maybe. She says, no, higher. 60, 65? No. 70? No. She tells me she's 83 years old.
Unbelievable.
I tell that story because she physically looked 30 years younger than she really was. And she was a living example of a lady who refused to accept limitations, that we're too old to do certain things, and when you get past a certain age, it's not possible. She's just one of thousands of different experiences that I've had in my life. I've seen athletes transcend previous opinions about them. Coaches who say they don't have the talent, they haven't got the skill level to be able to perform at a certain level. This player, this athlete, it's not for me, they're not for me. And then I've seen players take that opinion, go to a different organization, a different club, a different competitive institution, and prove that opinion wrong, and go all the way to the top.
Yes, I had this experience myself when I was young. There is like a team, you represent not your country, but your area where you live. And at the end of the tournament, the manager just put me out and said, listen, I didn't take you because you are the best players. I took you because you put a good atmosphere in the team. So I took it in the both sides. Once, because that means I've got the leadership inside of me. But the second side was my skills and my ability are not good. So I start to question myself. And when I grew up, one thing I had in my mind was never let anyone's opinion to define your reality. And when I grew up again, I start to find that's true. Everywhere you go, people's got opinion of you. But if you let this define your reality, you will never go anywhere. So I think we are on the same page, like on this. Don't limit yourself, what people think of you. You recently wrote The Future Coach, your first book, if I'm right. Can you tell us what led you to write a book at the first place?
I receive a lot of requests from lots of different people in lots of different countries all around the world, varying from amateur to professional, international level. And for some years, that's been a great privilege for me to go and work with different players, different teams, different athletes. But I realized that I had to create something for coaches to understand how to help their players. I found out from my experiences that certainly in England, we have been behind, lacking a great depth of understanding about the psychology of performance. And I think over the next 10 years, the biggest growth and development for coaches, certainly at a professional level, semi-pro, all the way through to amateur, is going to be around our understanding of human psychology. Once you understand the X's and the O's and the strategies and techniques, there's something else at play. As you climb the ladder, there's something else that the best coaches in the world get recruited for. And there's something else beyond strategy that the best coaches in the world define success by. And that is how they help their athletes, their teams, their staff, their people really believe in themselves and in their team. and that's about psychology. So understanding that, the reason it's called The Future Coach is because I think in the future, in the next 10 years, this is going to be the biggest area of growth in our understanding. And I think it's got the capacity to transform the levels which we've previously achieved. And in the section on leadership, I speak about the death of a leader who is only able to dictate. Dictatorial leadership is dying, almost dead. And gone are the days when you can just come in and instruct and leave as a coach and demand respect and not give it. That's dead. That's yesterday's news. There is a new player coming through that needs emotional support, that looks for reasons why we're doing certain practices. That's a thinking player. This book is for a thinking coach to help thinking players progress, because that's where we're at now. There is a new style of leadership that's demanded.
Okay. So what is your definition of a good coach now?
The greatest coach has to be an expert in multidisciplinary. He has to be a student of the game. He has to want to learn. He has to want to learn about the different disciplines that exist in high-performance environments. He knows that it's no longer good enough just to be an X's and O's strategist. There's something much more important. So he has to be a student and an expert in the same breath. He has to be curious about human potential and development. And in the end, there are many coaches who I believe are world-class psychologists in their own right to understand human beings. That's the future for me.
You didn't mention the pressure that a manager can have from the board, from the chairman, from the fans. Can you use the psychology to have an impact on the players and in the same time handle the pressure you've got on you?
The reality is that there's a lot of money involved at the very highest level. And you know better than I do that coaches have a shorter time span now than ever before to achieve success very quickly. I think what needs to happen is that chairmen, owners, need to be strong enough and intelligent enough to select the right coach, the right manager at the right time with the right skill set, and give them time to fulfill their potential in the role. Enough time to create some kind of stability, enough time to transfer their mindset and beliefs and the game plans and the strategies, enough time to be secure within themselves. Because ultimately, the leader is transferring his mindset all the time.
So what is the process for a coach to apply these principles?
Very simple. There's a maxim that says, know thyself. Know thyself. To understand others is to have power. To understand self is to be illuminated. And that sounds very poetic, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's good.
But there is a great power in having the capacity to understand ourselves first, before we go out there and look at others and become judgmental or become distracted or become focused on anybody else around us. To understand ourselves. That would be my number one tip for anyone who's in a coaching position or a leadership role, to be able to truly understand themselves, what they stand for, what they believe in.
Do you believe that these principles could be applied in another environment than just sports? Because we're talking about sports from now, but do you believe you can apply it in a working environment, a working industry?
Absolutely. And that is one of the things that I'm so pleased about. You know, some of the feedback about the book is that these principles, the book has been bought by senior management executives and in different blue chip corporations down in London. And it made me aware that these principles are principles based on human psychology. And it's interesting that previously to this one being released, I started a book that was for everyone in sport, business and life.
Okay.
And that's going to be the second book that's going to come out. But the
A good statement to do.
yeah, it's coming soon.
Yeah, okay.
Is performing under pressure the way that an athlete can transferable to an executive or somebody who's working out there in a different industry? And the answer is absolutely. Because as human beings, we program ourselves all the time. And so when we understand how to reprogram, we get to reach a new level of performance. For example, take anxiety. Most people don't know that anxiety has a formula, right? And there are three main things that cause athletes, coaches, teams, human beings to become anxious. The first is an element of the unknown, something that I can't quite predict in the environment. The second is some level of perceived threat physically or socially or reputation or perceived threat. And the third one is a perceived lack of coping resources. So if I'm an athlete and I'm about to cross the white line onto the field to perform at my best, and there's something that I can't quite predict, maybe my opponent, how he's going to play, their formation, their tactics, I don't know, something I can't predict. And there's a level of perceived threat. Look at the size of him, I might get hurt, physical threat. Her, look at the physical threat. Or if I miss this penalty, what will the press think? What will the media say? What will the manager do? Some kind of perceived threat. And I go inside of myself, and I don't think I have the coping resources inside to respond, then I end up being very anxious. The truth is, we can reverse that very simply by focusing on the things that we're in control of and take action. That's the first one, right? The unknown. Find out. Take control of the things that you're in control of. Take action on those things. The truth is that we can respond. We have the ability to respond. We can't always control the situations that we find ourselves in, but we always have control over our response. The response-able mindset, the ability to respond. And the third one, which we've just talked about, which is this perceived lack of coping resources. The truth is, as we've spoke about earlier, we really are capable of a lot more than
what we think, or
that
the
we
limit
think
we
of.
put in ourselves.
Absolutely. And there's that famous phrase, whether you think that you can or you think that you can't, you'll be right. Whether you think that you can or you think that you can't,
Okay.
you'll be right.
That's nice, yeah, powerful. Do you think if we start to work on the psychology, we could as well avoid injury?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if we look at stress, Rudy, for one example, we know scientifically now, the science is so well corroborated that it's become undisputable that a thought contains energy, and a positive thought, negative thought. If we think about stress, stress really begins in thought form. Thoughts become things. And so stress, the tension that we feel in our muscles, is a direct consequence of the thinking habits that we create for ourselves. There's too much work on for me right now. My training schedule is too much, I can't handle it. I can't do what the coach expects of me. My legs are becoming tired, and that means that my performance is going to drop. I can't respond to this. Stress, psychologically defined, is a perceived inability to respond to a situation. So if I think that I can't, that thought is the problem, is the issue, and it contains energy. My muscles become tense. If my muscles become tense, scientifically, any physician will tell you, and you know yourself, if your muscles aren't healthy in peak performance condition, injury becomes much more likely. So I would say unequivocally, absolutely, that if we are healthy and happy and positive and confident, then we can avoid injury, absolutely.
So many athletes got injured, because we're talking about injury during their career, unfortunately. Like I'm injured as well. What can you say about the process of the rehab? But we're talking about the psychology parts to get a player to do his rehab in the right way and maybe come back quicker or fitter or stronger? Is that the psychology part maybe we can use in a team? Maybe now we're not using it because the mentality is different, but maybe can we bring something different to help the player to recover?
100%. Absolutely. I think the best physicians know that the mental state of their player in preparation to recover is one of the most important things. Without the correct, healthy, happy, positive mindset, recovery becomes a lot slower. And the challenge is, for athletes, and when they're injured, I challenge them, can you be even stronger than you were previously? Can you be even better? And if it's, if I've injured my knee, okay, can you come back with a greater core stability than ever before? So can you set new goals for yourself? Can you understand that you can be better than you were before? And of course, sometimes, and you'll know this very well, when you're injured, an appreciation starts to really grow for the love of the game.
Yes.
And you actually become hungrier.
Yes, I think you realize that when you're not playing because you're injured and you see your partner on the pitch, you realize how much you love football and how much you love to train every day, to play with the team on the Saturday and win the games, how much you like to be in the changing room. I think you're missing it because when you're injured, you're a bit on your own, you are with the physio, you're out of the squad, the team is winning, so you don't enjoy the win. You play to get the win and enjoy with the squad. So you're a bit part of it. So that's where the psychology part comes, and you have to be strong to get this. So when you come back, you don't want to miss it again. So I think you do everything to make sure you stay fit. But unfortunately, injury can come back again. So would you say that the players should keep his relation with us, for example, someone like you, a sports psychologist, even after the injury, to make sure his mind is always set to succeed and always prepare himself to play and to train?
Definitely. And you've hit a very important point. There's this big idea that you only see a psychologist when you have a problem. You only see a psychologist. If you see a psychologist, it means you're weak. And you only see a psychologist when you've got a problem. This could not be further from the truth. And staying happy, healthy, positive is something about, come and see me or someone like me or a performance psychologist, sports psychologist, when you want to be the very best you can be, when you want to improve your standards, when you want to challenge yourself even after you think you've achieved your highest level, then come and see me again because there's more. We can go again, you see? So absolutely, I think it's very important. And not just the psychologist. If an injured player develops a great relationship with a physiotherapist or the doctor during that time, keep that going. If it's something that's going to help you, if it's going to fuel the energy tank, keep that going. Stick close to the people that inspire you, that give you energy, that make you feel that there's possibilities you can achieve. That's one of the most important things we can do in our lives. Be careful of the energy vampires. They're out there. They want to take that energy from you. Sometimes we can be our own worst energy vampire. So we have to get good at protecting ourselves from that danger about draining our energy. Spend time with the people that you love, that inspire you, that make you feel confident, that help you to believe in the possibilities of life. Because there's this much time.
Yeah, it goes quick. Everything goes quick. But is there any skills we can do on ourselves, like training our mind, you would advise to people watching or to athletes watching or to me? Because there is not too much sports psychologists in any clubs. We don't have the chance to have you, for example, up north. So is there any skills I can do myself to train my mind?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And there are many different mental training skills, techniques that you can use. How much time do you have?
I will find the time if it gets me the success and if it gets me happiness and can avoid injury. I will take the time.
Yeah. Okay. Something very simple, very easy. And I know you do this as well already, so you'll be able to relate to this one. A process of visualization. You know, there's this phrase: if you can see it in your mind, then you're going to hold it in your hand. And we've said before that thoughts become things. Thoughts become things. So this process of visualization is creating a mental image in our mind's eye of the most powerful version that we can envisage for our lives. Can you paint a picture of the best possible version of yourself? If you were to think and imagine about yourself as a strong, positive, confident, energetic person, what would that look like? How would he or she walk, stand, think, feel, perform? Often athletes use visualization before a game. So they run through the roles and responsibilities on the pitch. They'll see themselves in the specific situations that they need to do well in order to perform. And sometimes when I do visualizations with players, they say, "Tom, it was amazing because it happened exactly the way that I envisaged it to happen." And what we've come to know is that visualization is a very real, tangible, scientific process. It's not this wishy-washy kind of hocus-pocus magician. It's 2/3 of the activity in the brain is the same when we visualize as when we perform physically.
I'm agree with you, because I think if you ask different athletes, or especially the strikers, sometimes it's happened to me, and I spoke with a few strikers, it's happened to them as well. You visualize the goal before you scored this. So you were waiting for the cross to come here. That's why sometimes you say, he's always at the good place. But it's not the luck. It's because you've seen it before and he knows or he feels something's going to happen there. So if it is that powerful, why clubs are not using that much sports psychologists?
Yeah.
Is it getting new in the industry? Is it not a lot like you doing this kind of job? Or maybe the manager in charge or the staff in charge, the board in charge, are afraid to be too far away from this kind of thinking? What's the problem in the industry about it?
It's a very good question. And I think the answer is that there is a fundamental lack of understanding when it comes to the science of the brain. One, because it's very new and our understanding of the brain is becoming rapidly improved as we speak. But fundamentally, what we don't understand, we tend to avoid. Right? And if it's fuzzy, if I've never experienced it before, then I might not understand. And what I don't understand, possibly I can't control. And I avoid it because it's not a safe area for me. I don't know about it. But the growth mindset is essentially this idea that pretty much anything can improve with practice. And we're at a point now which is very exciting because for the first time ever, we can take the neurological scientific principles that are factual principles based in science and prove that psychology and the work of psychology has a fundamental role to play in the athletic development of our players. And as that understanding continues to improve, as this new curiosity continues over the next 10 years, you'll start to see a lot more of people like me coming through. Universities will have courses and train people on a greater scale. Clubs will certainly start to invest more heavily in the service of sports psychology, I feel, and over the next 10 years, it's going to be huge.
But if the club start to bring up sports psychology to help the players, what do you think the players are going to think about it? Do you think they're going to use it, or they, as you mentioned earlier, they're going to think it's a weakness if I'm going to see Tom?
Yeah. That's a fantastic question, because wherever I've been very privileged that the senior leaders of the organization, right from the owner to the chief executive to the director of football, the manager, the head coach, have all been on the same page about the importance and value of the service of sports psychology. When I have that, and I've been very privileged to have had that in my career, I think it makes it easier for the players to understand that this is something that's part of my everyday training program. And it's not something to be afraid of. This is something that I can actually use to improve every single day. And that's why before my title has been performance coach, because as we spoke about before, to improve performance. When players understand there's not something to be fearful of that they can use every day to get better, and that the top of the organization, the owner, chief executive, manager, are buying in and also understand and also see the value for, then it stands much more a chance of being successful across the organization. Some don't feel the need to use a sports psychologist, not because they're afraid or that they don't understand, it's because they simply feel that they don't need to, work with one. And that's okay, that's fine. This is very important that this isn't forced on.
But there's some players or some people, because I think we can even make it larger, just not about the sports. Their performance are going down or bad for a moment, not just because of the sports environment, but something deeper in their life, which can happen when they were younger or even now. So are you able to target it and to see it through someone when he's coming in your office, and maybe you see it's not just about sports, but can be about something else?
Yeah, absolutely. And if a human being is unhappy in their core relationships, in their marriage, with their children, if they have financial difficulties, it can significantly affect performance. And that's where the importance of trust and an authentic relationship based on trust, that there is no other agenda other than a pure intention to help that human being to be the very best they can be. When that trust is built, which takes some time, doesn't happen instantaneously, then you get to understand people care, actually. And it makes it much easier, much more likely. And I'm not the head coach. I'm not someone that's going to decide whether this player is going to play in the team. So normally, and I've been very privileged, players understand they can share with me things that they would not necessarily share with other people or other staff members. And because of that, they feel safe to be able to speak about things that are most important to them. Not always do I pick up on those things. Not always do athletes or coaches share those things. But I think the trust, which takes time to build, is a fundamental part of helping people to improve the quality of their lives.
When you come in your new clubs and you introduce yourself and the manager introduces yourself, is it not that hard to show the players that you're not linked with the manager? Because I think it's going to be the first problem you're going to get when you go in the club. That the players are going to think that everything's going to tell you, you're going to repeat to the manager, and it can affect the weekend game.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with it?
Well, it's very easy. The manager understands that I'm employed by the football club, but I'm not a spy. And I have an obligation, an oath of confidentiality to uphold. And so anything that's discussed on a private and confidential basis remains confidential. And at no stage, if I was to at any point share something which was confidential between player and psychologist with the manager, I'm dead. With all of the rest of the players and all of the staff, and even with the manager, because the manager will see that I'm sharing something which is private and confidential. If I'm doing that with a player to the manager, maybe I do it with the manager to the player. And trust can be broken very quickly. So it's dead simple. I don't share what's private and confidential, and that stays with me.
Mm-hmm. Is it not harder with the young generation to get them to see you? Because when you get older, I came because I was older and understand myself more than when I was younger. So it's easier for me to open myself and to talk, because I've got nothing to hide and I'm not ashamed to share my emotion with you or with someone else. But how can you get the trust and the will for the young generation to come to see you and to share and to open themselves?
It's a great question. Wherever I've been in any football club, I've always found that the earlier that I can work with a player or a team, the better, because their understanding improves quite quickly, and it's something that they grow up with as part of their holistic development, as part of their interdisciplinary. It's as natural and as normal for them to come and see me as it is to work with the physiotherapist, the strength and conditioning coach, the actual technical coach. I think the earlier that can happen, the better, so that then players growing up in that environment very quickly learn, by the time they're a senior professional, this is natural to me. This is something that I've done for years. And often it takes that. When I think about the success that I've achieved in my career and the players that have gone on to be quite successful, it's because of that relationship when they started, when they were 16 years of age, and they've naturally progressed. And I've been part of their journey all the way through. And now they're performing on the biggest stage of all. In this summer, some of them will be performing in the World Cup. That's something that hasn't happened overnight. That's been a constant, every day, year by year, facing the challenges, supporting them through the challenges, celebrating the good times, stretching the limits even more during the good times. And because of that, that's what I mean about trust taking time. It doesn't happen overnight. But it's a great privilege for me to see them performing in a World Cup.
Are you proud of it?
Well, I'm proud of them. I'm proud of their achievements. I'm proud of the courageousness and open-mindedness that they possess. Without that, my position wouldn't exist.
If you could pass a single piece of advice as an author or as a psychologist, what would it be for people watching?
Theodore Roosevelt once said that the future belongs to those who believe in the beauty of their dreams.
My last question, it's more personal than how would you like to be remembered?
I think I would like to be remembered as someone who was able to help others overcome the challenges that they face in their life and achieve the beauty of their dreams. I'd like to be remembered as someone who helped whilst they could.
Helping people.
With what they had.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom, for sharing your knowledge and your wisdom in the first episode of The Path of a Better You. I really appreciate, how much I like you, and I had a great moment today. So thank you again, and hopefully we'll see you outside this show.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Tom.
Thank you.
Make sure you check Tom's website, it's tombatescoaching.com, and you will find his details. You can contact him at any time, and you will have the chance to meet someone very powerful So thank you everyone for watching The Path of Better You. It was the first episode. It was a privilege, as I said before, to have you on the show. Please subscribe, like it, comment, and I wish you a pleasant day. Peace.